and welcome. You're watching the hashtag Booster Shot Budget on Business Today. I'm Sakshi Batra and with me, Siddharth Zarabi, who
Thank you
has
so
been
much.
Continuously on India Today, on Aaj Tak. You've been watching him cover today's economic survey, talk to a whole host of experts. So tell us, Siddharth, what are the big key highlights that we are seeing on the economic survey, especially on the big numbers of the GDP?
Well, the biggest way that we could sort of describe this best way to describe it really is that the economic survey reveals to us that the government, the Ministry of Finance, and specifically the economic division which writes this survey is very optimistic about the future of the Indian economy. Two quick things. The economic survey is actually a compendium, a document. This time it's some 42 pages.
Yes.
Thanks for that. And it's in one volume, not two volumes, but most importantly, it is about the current financial year, and India follows a financial year of April 1 to 31st March. And it comes just a day before the budget. In the earlier days, Sakshi, it used to be said that if you went through the fine print of the survey, you would get to know what the budget will contain.
Yes.
But I have seen that happen rarely. However, the biggest number, like you correctly said, is next year's growth projection, which is 8 to 8.5%. And obviously, we can take that up later. But I just wanted to add that the second bit to look at with the current year's 9.2% GDP projection, which has already come out,
Yes.
is the fact that the economic survey reiterates that tax collections have been very good, and therefore the fiscal deficit from April to November was contained at only 46% of budget estimates. 2 months further have passed, but we are in a good situation financially. The Government of India, the Union of India is in a far better financial shape than it has been in the earlier 2 years after the pandemic started. That's the key headline.
So, in all likelihood, we will meet that 6.8% of the GDP mark of the fiscal deficit?
Well, that's definitely going to happen. I think there could be a positive surprise because of higher tax collections, because of last minute, at least in the context of today, disinvestment, for example, of the steel company. We don't know what is going to happen to Bharat Petroleum. There's a
Yes.
bit of a back and forth. The government has been struggling, but it's actually not the government's fault. The fact is that the energy cycle turned 2 years back. Oil went into negative territory. Now you have green energy push. So, carbon is bad, and that is reflecting perhaps on the valuations and bidding interest. And then you have the biggest one, LIC, where there are two views, that while the approval and the entire implementation process will happen, will the money actually come before 31st March?
In this fiscal year or
Or
the next fiscal year?
But whichever way, that is going to be a big one. So clearly next year also, revenue will be equally good, but will it grow at
This
the
pace.
pace? That's a big question. So that's the way to look at it. The survey reveals a far more confident set of numbers, which should feed into the government and Nirmala Sitharaman in her fourth budget speech tomorrow, being a little bit more aggressive
Right.
in talking up and believing in the growth numbers that are put out.
Absolutely, but would this also mean that the government can actually get back on the fiscal consolidation path, keeping in
That's a
mind that
wonderful question. Sakshi, what you are really asking, and she's asked this big point, is it time for the government to pull back on some of the additional expenditure it has done in the last 2-3 years, including this year? I'll just give you one set of numbers, viewers, and try and understand this. In the budget, the subsidy bill for the current financial year on food and fertilizer, which constitutes a bulk of that subsidy, was at 3.25 crore. Lakh crore. I'm just rounding it off. That was the broad number. However, within that, the fertilizers subsidy and the food subsidy, the two different numbers, what we are seeing is that there is likely 1.5 lakh additional lakh crore, beg your pardon, 1.5 lakh additional crore that has been already spent in this year.
Right.
So, which means that the food fertilizer subsidy burden could go up to 4.5 lakh or more in the current financial year.
Right.
But if that kind of additional expenditure is not incurred next year, this food subsidy number could be lower. So there are multiple numbers that we will be looking for. But again, to recap, tax revenues have been stupendously better than expected.
Correct.
Growth has rebounded, although it's K-shaped. There are concerns that a certain section of the economic strata are not doing as well. There is strain. You have seen what has happened to motorcycle sales.
Yes.
On the other hand, there is a set of people who want to buy cars, but they are facing delays due to semiconductor, and people are saying, "Ye semiconductor kya hota hai?"
Yes.
I thought I was buying a car, not some technology. So you know those details, Sakshi, really.
Yes, absolutely. But as we move forward to the big day, the union budget, what is it that we are getting as an indication for the budget going forward from here, from the economic survey? Which segments will be in focus going forward for the government?
Frankly, I haven't had time yet to go through that, but I would say the broad direction of the budget, the difference between what we expect and what the government intends to do and can do is big. I'll just leave you with one thought of what the expectations could exist. Let's, for example, take the political environment currently.
Yes.
2022 is going to be a year of 7 elections.
Yes.
5 elections are coming up
Immediately.
and March we will know what has happened. That has clearly meant that the government has not been has cut excise duties, if you remember, in November on petrol and diesel.
Yes.
And I'm not saying that the oil companies are being dictated by politics, but it's almost 82 days, if I'm not wrong, and my colleague Rajesh Sundaram tracks this far closer. For last 82 days, there have been no revisions of prices by oil marketing companies.
Despite the global oil prices rising.
We are going up by almost 50%.
Absolutely.
Global crude is at
Almost 90.
So look at it. So therefore, I think there will be a political economy pressure on the budget. Yet, last year Nirmala Sitharaman in her third budget actually did a stupendous job in that context. Today, you need to support growth.
Yes.
You need to ensure that inflation doesn't go out of control. You need to continue effective implementation of infrastructure and other projects. And finally, some relief for those who need it. There are quarters who are saying, 2019 you gave a corporate tax cut. Please do something for the middle class, which has, for example, had a terrible time due to job loss, income loss, higher medical and health expenditures, among many.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Siddharth, for
Thank you,
sharing all
Sakshi,
these
for having me.
insights on the economic survey. Fingers crossed for the upcoming budget, and hopes are high for all these segments. But the fiscal room is limited. We just have to wait to find out what all makes to the final budget speech tomorrow. But stay tuned on to Business Today for this entire mammoth coverage that we are doing continuously, hours and hours for you, bringing you all the insights from the top experts of the business and economy world. Thank you so much for tuning in for now.
Thank you. Bye-bye.